So this is, this is a thing. We have it being propelled by what Harvey Cox at Harvard, who was the one who phrased the phrase, the secular society. He wrote a book on it, saying that religion would be marginalized back in the 60s, based on what the sociologists and secular scholars were saying, that religion would play a smaller and smaller part. Then in the 1990s, he wrote a book called Fire from Heaven, focusing on the Pentecostal movement, but saying this is not just true of the Pentecostal movement. In every culture in the world, there is the largest religious revival going on in the history of mankind. So where before, like our State Department thought we could ignore religion and that's just a private matter, suddenly it's bursted out into the fore in the last 10 years. And certain aspects of it get media coverage, so people are aware of those, but actually the desire for experiential religion, the desire for personal relationship with the divine, however you conceive of it, is what is driving all of this. And also an interdimensional factor to it, where it's, like in speaking in tongues, and it's different in different parts of the world, how it manifests culturally, but that desire, not just for experience of the divine, but for experiences of contact with energies that are not physical, however you conceive of that. Angels, spirits, all these different things. But that personal kind of dynamism, that, flowing out, that in its original manifestations usually breaks down the concepts of identity and different things that people have, and fuses people together. Like in the Pentecostal movement, the Azusa Street Church was completely multiracial. This phenomenon of speaking in tongues, when it first manifested in the modern world, was so powerful, and it embraced people of Hispanic, black, and white cultures there. It wasn't until it really began to develop, and they had to felt that they had to organize, and they started to study more theology and try to fit it to their experiences, that different denominations of it began to break off, and they sadly broke off in white and black lines. The point is, because these are examples relevant to our culture, within Islam, within Buddhism, within Hinduism, within people who are returning to the more old religions, revival of paganism, that there's a tremendous religious awakening going on. Harvey Cox said, with all of its promise and perils. But it is a necessary process. Nietzsche declaring that God was dead at the end of the 19th century, and people moving in that direction, was a necessary part of the process of breaking down the old wineskins and bringing the world into an intensified process of cultural Confusionism. Once again, in my view, the people who help to advance this process the most are the ones who open their minds and trust the Spirit. We're going through an election process right now, right? Election processes can be very confusing. And you have a spectrum of reactions on the part of people, right? You have the people who are the partisans, and I'm not putting them down because it's part of the process, but who attach themselves to a candidate or support a candidate, and they know they've got it right. They know that whatever the campaign says is right, and they're going to defend it. Even if in their mind they say, gee, I really like this guy and everything like that, I'm not sure if I agree with that, but when it comes to going out and fighting for your candidate, you're going to put that aside and, support your candidate. You have the people who are totally negative about everybody, right? And don't want to open themselves to the process because either they've been embittered emotionally, which is something actually on a different level, because confusion is not just mental, it's emotional too. So they don't even want to participate in the process. But actually, even being that way, they still are participating in the process. And then you have people who, they go, okay, well, this is an exciting and energizing election, and I really want to try to understand it, and I'm going to be uncommitted and listen to the point of view of everybody and try to really understand it. You know, and that's a difficult process, because it's actually even difficult to find out who the people really are. You can hear what their campaigns are saying, but you know, and then a lot of it, like I say, it's not what they're saying, but how are they? How do they seem? Do they seem to be genuine and sincere and everything? So exposing yourself to as much information from all sides, right? And then I believe, actually, and it may be different for different people. Two people who are very sincere may resonate to the opposite candidates. For me, that's actually part of the process, because you know, there are things that they are more in touch with that that candidate may represent that voice. And people that I've talked to that have been pretty open, they actually resonate to a large degree to both sides. They go, you know, there are things that I like about both. People who have made their choice, they go, but you know, I choose this for this reason. Anyway, I'm just using that as an example in the social process, you know. And I don't think it's helpful in any case. I know I've met people who it's like, on a spiritual level, they go, you know, I don't like the major religions that have the Magian Persian kind of thing, dividing the world into dark and light, and our side is good and the other side is evil, right? You have to realize that you need to be able to see from the other point of view, that you need to be able to embrace that that kind of demonization just causes division. And yet then if you talk about politics with a lot of these people, they suddenly are totally irrational. If you say anything like, you know, so, well, what are the reasons why the United States is involved in the Middle East from a point of view? And there are probably a lot of different factors, you know, everything from, you know, being upset, you know, because the person threatened your daddy's life, to the oil, to ideological factors, to a sincere desire to advance freedom and democracy and human rights, to, you know, I mean, a multiplicity of factors. But if you say anything to try to analyze that, the person can't even listen. They have a visceral stomach reaction, you know, like, you know, because they're so filled with hatred. And on that level, on the political level, they have divided the world into light and darkness, you know. So anyway,